Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into something absolutely mind-bending. We're looking at a massive, mathematically verified ledger that literally attempts to prove the hidden topology of existence itself. Yeah, you heard that right. It's called the Gnosis Ledger. It uses this formal mathematical language called Lean-4 to basically bridge the gap between ancient philosophy, beautiful poetry, and cutting-edge modern computing. It's wild.
To make sense of all this, we've got a roadmap. We'll start with the universal Gnosis Ledger, then look at proving poetry with topology. After that, we're rotating the impossible camel, exploring language as a quasi-crystal, and finally, looking at topological budgets in AI. Let's get right into it.
Okay, Section 1. The Universal Gnosis Ledger, formalizing existence in Lean-4. So just take a look at the sheer scale here. This is the start of a sprawling table of contents from a massive 234-file project mapping out geometric structures. Now, the authors built this using Lean-4. If you don't know, that's an automated theorem prover. What does that mean for us? It means everything we are about to discuss has quote-unquote zero sorries and zero new axioms. Basically, it is completely mathematically bulletproof within its own framework. No leaps of faith required. And as we scroll down a bit, notice how wildly these topics bounce around. I mean, we go from super rigid mathematical frameworks like knots and manifolds, and then boom, straight into theology and what the authors call manifold cross-pollination. It's like they're building this massive structural catalog of reality itself. It's like a giant puzzle. Then, right at the bottom of the index, we hit the ultimate goal. You can see it right there, unifying physics, logic, and spirituality. Unbelievable, right? All of these wildly different, usually entirely separate fields brought together and backed by rigorous mathematical proofs. And it all stems from just one foundational building block. So what is that building block? It's a concept called the Kleinemann. This anchors our entire explainer today. Mathematically speaking, the Kleinemann represents the absolute smallest possible unit of change. Think of it as just a +1 perturbation in any system. It's the minimum irreducible step. Every single structure, every movement, honestly, even every thought in this ledger begins with a Kleinemann lift. Keep this idea in your back pocket because it is literally the key to unlocking everything else we're going to look at today. Moving on to Section 2, Proving Poetry with Topology, the Basha Witness. Now, take a look at this beautiful, famous haiku by the 17th century poet Basho. How still it is here, stinging into the stones, the locusts trill. Now, you read that and think, well, that's purely artistic, right? But no, the source code of this ledger literally models the 17-syllable poem as a formal topological witness proof. The text actually uses this specific poem as the minimum not required to mathematically tie a theorem together. Let that sink in for a second. Let's actually break this down topologically. Stillness, that is the vacuum state. Zero entropy, zero Kleinemann. It's the absolute baseline of being. Then we have the sting. That sting is exactly one Kleinemann. It's a single unit of topological charge, a +1 perturbation entering those stones. And finally, the trill. That's the emergent oscillation. The ledger, formally, mathematically, proves that you simply cannot have a trill without a sting. The trill is the mathematical witness that stillness plus a sting equals the trill. Basically, the math proves that emergent action absolutely cannot exist without first disturbing the peace. All right, Section 3, Rotating the Impossible Camel, a Theological Topology. So you probably know the classic biblical paradox, right? The impossibility of a rich man entering heaven, likened to a camel trying to pass through the eye of a needle. Well, the Gnosis Ledger completely reframes this entire idea. It argues that this isn't actually an impossibility of size or trying to squeeze something huge into something tiny. Actually, scratch that. It's a 3D topological rotation problem. It's a failure of orientation, not a failure of passage. Check out the stark difference in orientation here. On the left, we have a camel trying to pass broadside. This represents the rich man claiming godlike causal power through his wealth, what the text calls animal magnetism. He's taking up too much space. But look over at the right. If you just rotate end-on into what's called a signature orientation, basically dropping the ego and recognizing your own finite nature, the passage suddenly opens. The entire impossibility just dissolves under the right rotation. It's all about perspective. Moving to Section 4, Language as a Quasi-Crystal, the Aperiodic Trajectory. So if poetry and theology map mathematically, what about language itself? Well, the ledger proposes that language evolves as an aperiodic rotation through semantic space. Sounds complicated, I know, but let's look at this timeline. It shows how word order forms this trajectory, moving through semantic pitches in a deterministic but non-repeating 5-step pattern. Think of these noise colors as the frequency of meaning shifting inside your brain. We start at stillness with brown noise, then we jump to the sting, move into the oscillating pink noise of the trill, hit a return state in violet, and finally reach a mixed white noise state before looping back to zero.
Have you ever seen a Penrose tiling? Those geometric patterns that perfectly fill a plane but never ever repeat? This theory mathematically explains why your absolute favorite poems or famous speeches feel so rigidly rule-governed, yet somehow completely fresh every single time you hear them. It's a linguistic quasi-crystal. The underlying harmony cycles perfectly underneath, but the surface words change positions aperiodically. So you get constant novelty without ever losing that core topological structure. It's pretty amazing. And finally, Section 5, Topological Budgets in AI, the Cost of Attention.
Now we bring it all to the bleeding edge. Remember the Kleineman we talked about earlier? Well, look at the top row of this table. In this framework, a modern AI's attention step, like when a model compares one word to another, has a literal Buckley unit cost equal to exactly 1 Kleineman lift. Meaning, the exact same rigid mathematical rules governing Boscho's 17th century haiku strictly dictate the scaling laws of modern transformer AI. The AI's total model capacity is mathematically identical to a topological budget ceiling. And get this, the perfect initial state for a neural network? It's the exact same vacuum state that Boscho described in his poetic stillness. Because every single step costs exactly 1 Kleineman, just look at the math here, n heads times token squared. The cost scales quadratically. The ledger proves that building superintelligence isn't just about throwing more and more data at a wall and hoping it sticks. It is strictly constrained by the fundamental exponential mathematical budget of the universe. There is just no escaping this math. Whether you're out in the woods writing a haiku or in a server farm scaling a trillion-parameter large language model, it's all the same topology. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We've just seen how the Gnosis Ledger uses the exact same foundational math, the Kleineman, the vacuum, the rotation, to decode a 17th century poem, a 2,000-year-old biblical paradox, and the scaling laws of tomorrow's artificial intelligence. It really forces us to ask, what other impossible problems in our world aren't actually impossible at all, but are simply waiting for the right topological rotation? Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep exploring.